PSA, don't turn on vibrant visuals if you haven't updated your add-ons or you'll get this. This is meant to be a furniture vendor, but instead it's a buggy, broken mess. Speaking of broken, by the way, I think that when people saw the brand new copper torches, they immediately wondered why we have 4 of those and indeed just 3 lanterns. Aren't we missing one? And it took 12 hours for Nova Worship to create this, even inside of copper. It looks great to see a redstone lantern, but it raises the question, why do some features make us amazed and some features make us feel like the game is missing something major? Like, if we have copper versions of most iron items now, why don't we have iron grates? Well, let's go into that today, alongside a lot of other popular posts you might not have seen, because this is Bits, and hello, I'm AbbyXToyCat. Consider subscribing, but first let's start with one of the most popular posts of the last week. It is from the Minecraft subreddit saying, termites are here. 9.5 thousand people upvoted this kind of post, and I've got to say, as someone who believes you should have voted for the savannah, that, let's be honest, this is probably as much gameplay value as we were ever going to get from the termites. As someone who believes staunchly they should update the savannah, I think the things that actually get people excited are the new trees, or indeed the ostriches, and that termites are just kind of there, which means they can also be here. And so if you believe the savannah should be updated, you should totally build one of these in your... Actually, you know, why am I saying you should do this? I'm gonna do this. There we go. Now I have termites in my world to show that we already have 1/3 of the savannah update, so let's go get that other 2/3 now, right? Right, Mojang? Are we gonna go update those things? Well, this is one of the serious points of this video that I want to talk about, although I'd also like to talk about this. Because before we can leave the subject of mob votes behind, I was just scrolling Reddit and got recommended this crab teaser, and as you can see, it's Mojang's official blog post for the snapshot update, and it looks like they've got a random lobster on there for no good reason. Now, as someone who loves the idea of a lobster, and even has added a lobster roll to the Boss Blitz update that's coming out shortly, what's really fun about this is I can't not see this as a lobster, and I literally had to zoom in so far before I realized, oh no, this is someone who has the exact same brain as me. They just want to believe they see a crustacean, but actually that's 4 separate hearts, because Minecraft Java has the ability to add custom emojis to signs, sort of like you've been able to do on Bedrock, just a bit less janky. Speaking of less janky, these are the jankiest videos on my channel, and sometimes some of my favorites, but it's important that we come back to the main topic, which I said we'd go into, because I think it's really interesting that we've seen, if you will listen to my brief thesis, that we've seen more content updates for Minecraft this past year than we have ever before. We've seen 5 separate updates come out for Bedrock as of 1/21/100, and we're about to get our 3rd cross-platform drop for both Bedrock and Java. This is a very big deal, but it means we move into the phase where an update feels like it's been out forever already, a lot sooner, and a good example of this would be the Garden Awakens drop. I'm told a lot of people use resin for their termite builds these days, and what's interesting is this idea that updates kind of like stick, and most people don't suggest changes to that one, but one of the updates that is the exception is of course the spring drop. There are still so many missed opportunities that people still talk about, such as this Reddit user, a continued oak, who got hundreds of upvotes saying, I wonder why Mojang never added more sheep variants when they did for the others. This is one of those ideas that people thought Mojang were going to add, and then when they didn't, it kind of sat in the back of people's minds, and still is in the front of some people's minds to this day. And I think the same thing is happening on a much bigger scale with copper, now that they have taken it from being just an ore that you can mine and turn into literally 2 things, into an entire block set with the trial chambers, and now into something you can use for tools, armor, and all of these other resources. They are making copper into something massive, but the problem with that is that when they added copper, they said that it only needed 2 uses, and then when they added the trial chambers, they said, well, that was meant to be everything, but that means we're starting to run into a bit of an issue where instead of Minecraft updates coming out and people saying, yes, this is fully finished, they clearly only meant for us to have 1 use for the copper, or 1 use for the amethyst. Now, if something doesn't have a use, it makes the game feel a bit unfinished. Another example of this is the fact that when Minecraft added all of these stair and slab variants for every stone-based ingredient, it means that now every time they add a stone-based thing, people are going to question, why doesn't that have stairs and slabs? When Tuff came out, it didn't have those, and at first people were like, okay, maybe there's a good reason, but then they just added these later, and so that means that if you're angry about the lack of calcite or amethyst stairs, it means that actually, it's not that Mojang has a really good reason not for adding them, it just means they haven't done so yet, and I think this is a shame that copper has literally dozens of uses now, and an entire page and a half of the creative inventory, while there is actually just a single use for amethyst and just 2 for lapis. This is something I could ruminate on for the better part of an hour, the fact that Mojang went from seeming like a company that knew exactly what they were doing to seeming like a company that feels like they're trying to satisfy, but instead of doing that, I'm just gonna say, you know what, if we're allowed to suggest anything, and clearly it's Mojang's fault for not adding it, I think that Heuristic's idea for a 4th dimension being called the other side is absolutely genius. I love this as an idea. I don't necessarily love the idea of it being an inverted never. Personally, I'd love to see overworld never end and then a 4th dimension being kind of optional from any of those first 3, but still, the 4th dimension is clearly something that is coming eventually, because think about it this way, if it took from 1.17 till now for us to get all of the copper uses, that means that 1.19 is only going to be another couple of updates away from seeing the full uses of the Ancient City portal. More seriously, if you were to ask me what Mojang is actually doing wrong here that makes people desperately want to see new sheep variants or redstone lamps or indeed 4th dimensions, I think that I would actually say that this is the flip side of the benefits of the drop system. I think that drops are really, really good for getting frequent updates out, for getting them out there basically as soon as people have seen them in snapshots for like a month or 2, but the downside of just surprising people with new content that comes out every week and you genuinely don't expect it, and the lack of announcements, is the fact that because there was no announcement of the overall scope they were planning, it means that you don't know that if Mojang were planning to add new sheep and then either forgot or more seriously decided the resources weren't worth it, or even just changed their mind on it, or whether it was a feature that was never decided for in the beginning. You don't know that if Mojang had a full year to do this copper drop, if they would decide to add iron versions of copper features, or if they're just so focused on copper right now that there's nothing else outside of that block set that they really feel like adding. This is the problem with the drop systems, not having any announcements and having people literally just see what has been added by developers this week leaves people wondering, you know, what ideas were left on the table and what ideas were on the table but simply didn't make it to the game. Anyway, speaking of the game, this is a bits video, and so as much as I'd love to delve deep into this topic, I'd also love to show you this interesting problem. Again, 9.5 thousand upvotes. The Minecraft community seems to be thriving. So too does our IBX Toycat community, by the way. Thanks for everyone posting there. But this is someone saying, what block is passable and invisible, which can stop water because signs are not working well? And I would say signs are actually working really well here, but their idea is that they need a passable, invisible block. And the solution to this is really fun in my opinion, because ultimately you don't have that many options. If you need it to be a wide space, you're going to have to use glass or signs. If it is something that is at most too wide, you can replace that glass with buttons, and amazingly, these buttons will keep the water at bay. As you can see, it would flow down were there no buttons. This is kind of crazy, but it is limited, but it's as limited as you can get in survival. Buttons, signs, or glass, you've got to pick one of those 3, but if you're playing creative anyway, well, there's some unique blocks only found in the creative menu. So if we say give at self and then light, you'll find there are actually 15 light block levels. We'll just pick 10 for now, and these are actually, these look like this, kind of crazy to look at in third person, and in theory, these should be able to stop the water, but look at this, I'll place one right there, and weirdly, unlike the button, water can flow through the light block. This is actually a fun piece of parity error, because the exact same thing on the Java edition will reveal very different results. Here is water flowing, as you can see, and here is my light block managing to stop it like it's a button. This means that if you play Java, assuming no one has a light block, they'll never notice that they are there, and there's no box around it, meaning if you want to have light truly float, you can do that only on Java. Whereas, which is one of the weird differences. Another one is the fact that there's not 15 light blocks on Java, there's just the one that you have to choose the attributes for if you really want to. There's so many ridiculous versions of these, but we can pick the light level off our light block, but by default it's 15 over here, whereas on Bedrock there's 15 different ones. This is one of the many odd differences between Java and Bedrock, but to finally answer the question, we'll go back to the formerly Big Salmon version of the game, now the Big Bone Salmon version of the game. And I can show you that over here, there is one more item still only available in Creative via commands. That's right, you might think when you're in Creative, you have access to everything, but especially on the Bedrock version, there are so many different functionalities you're missing if you don't miss them, but you can use barriers to achieve the exact same thing, but there is one critical error. It's not the fact that you can see the barriers, to be clear, you can't if you're not holding one, but it is the fact that even in survival, you can tell there is a block here, and although you can't mine that block, you can kind of see exactly how it's being achieved, and so this is a funky Bedrock Java parity issue. Even in something as simple as the answer to how do you stop water pouring down, gives you a different answer depending on which version you're playing. Also, because it's a solid block, it means that if you're sitting in the water, you can't actually float up and down through it, because it blocks players, not just water. And so, yeah, isn't that fun? I hope you think so, because this video is always one of my favorite ones to make. I hope you enjoyed bits this week. There's lots of things that I always just want to like share in some fashion, and hopefully this video's done a good job at doing precisely that. If it doesn't, then here is a gold palette for all of the copper blocks that currently exist. Don't they look wonderful? Isn't there a decent argument we could add all of those to the game? What is the argument we don't, in fact, you could say? But then we also have the fact that the Iron Grate, to bring it all back round, could solve lots of issues by allowing water to pass through, but not players, or water and players to pass through, or water, not water, but players. We've got lots of choices, Mojang. It's up to you to decide which of those you want to do. Yeah, in case you want one last meme to end the video on, here is proof that Mojang only added the copper torch for Microsoft propaganda reasons. Okay, with that said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you on Saturday at this point. Goodbye. Maybe, no, oh, wait. Yeah, goodbye. Oh, sugarcane! It goes invisible on Java now, too. There's one more fun fact to end the video on. Good night.